Thank you and good afternoon. I especially want to thank the work that's been done by Ivanka Trump and the Office of American Innovation to develop the proposals that we'll be talking about this week. I'll be traveling with her tomorrow to Wisconsin, where we'll be looking at some excellent programs. Her leadership on this issue has been invaluable. As you know by now, the President will be making an important announcement regarding apprenticeships this week. He'll be visiting the Department of Labor on Wednesday. There are currently 6 million job openings in the United States, vacant jobs that can be filled. This is the highest number of job vacancies ever. A Business Roundtable survey released just last week found that 95% of executives reported problems finding qualified workers. Americans want to work. American companies want to hire. The issue is a mismatch between available jobs and prospective employees' job skills. This skills gap is a particular challenge in some of the fastest growing sectors of the economy, healthcare and information technology. And it also persists in some of the more traditional sectors of the economy. There are currently 360,000 job vacancies in manufacturing. There are 200,000 job vacancies in construction. And with the upcoming plans for infrastructure, those job vacancies in construction are only going to increase. Apprenticeships teach skills needed to bridge this skills gap. An apprenticeship combines a paid work component with an educational component. Apprentices earn while they learn, and in the process, they largely avoid the substantial student debt that you see with higher education today. The most obvious benefit of apprenticeships is a good job. Individuals who complete apprenticeship programs have an average starting salary of about $60,000 a year. 9 out of 10 are employed upon completion of the programs. Both the starting salary and the employment rate are higher than that of traditional college graduates. Apprenticeships are also going to increase to labor productivity. Apprentices hit the ground running. When they start a job, they're more able, more productive, and tend to be more loyal to the employer. Despite these benefits, apprenticeships make only about 3% of the American workforce. This administration will expand apprentices across most, if not all, industries. Higher education, too, should assume responsibility for promoting apprenticeships. Community colleges and four-year colleges have an obligation to work with students to educate them in skills they need to succeed. Demand-driven, experience-based education is not new. It's used to some extent in the healthcare sector. Demand-driven, experience-based education can be improved, and it can be used in a wide variety of sectors to further expand the workforce. Incorporating apprenticeships into 2- and 4-year degree programs would offer students both traditional learning and skills-based learning. And this is particularly important for those students who learn better by doing. President Trump has seen firsthand the success of apprenticeship programs in the building trades, where he is very familiar. The building trades invest nearly $1 billion a year of private money into the apprenticeship program. President Trump has made clear his commitment to expand job opportunities here in America. Apprenticeships is one very important way that President Trump will fulfill that promise. And again, I'm very excited to work with Ivanka Trump and Reed Cordish and the Office of American Innovation as this program goes forward. Questions? Yes. I'm sorry, yes, in the front.
So how exactly do you plan to expand these apprenticeships? What is the government going to do? I guess it's our understanding that it's not necessarily, you're not going to put more money towards these programs. So how are these apprenticeships going to expand? So
if you look in the building trades, there's almost $1 billion that's spent every year, and that's all private sector money. The building trades have put together labor management organizations that jointly invest in these apprenticeship programs because they know, both on the labor side and the management side, that a skilled workforce is critical to the building trades. And that's how it's worked for a number of years. I've talked to several CEOs. Ivanka Trump has spoken to several CEOs. And there's excitement in the business sector. The private-private partnership, where businesses come together with educational institutions to actually focus on demand-driven education, to focus education on the skills that business is demanding has worked in other sectors and can work throughout the economy. Yes?
So the question is, where exactly do you see these apprenticeships? Because most of the complaints against it is that it's for low-paying jobs and not the higher education jobs that you need, and that it amounts to nothing more than indentured servitude.
So that's just factually wrong. If you look at Department of Labor data, the average starting salary for an apprentice is $60,000 a year, and that's higher than a college graduate. You know, I was out in Michigan at the Ford facility. I met with some of the apprentices at the Ford facility, and they love it. They love it. Let me finish. They love it. They are excited about it, and they're being paid a very, very good wage. I should add, though, that you see apprenticeships in white-collar positions as well. There are a number of firms that we're talking to that are looking at it for areas like bookkeeping, accounting. If you look at law schools, for example, there's been conversations, even in law schools, about the need for more experience-based education. The Carnegie Commission came out with a report a number of years ago about the importance of experience-based education in law. So the point I'm making is we need to stop thinking that this is limited to a certain kind of the job sector. Experience-based education works throughout all sectors of the economy. Yes,
just a quick follow-up, if I may. Just a quick follow-up.
One follow-up.
Okay, so but is your program geared towards the white-collar jobs or to mostly?
Our program is geared will be geared to all industries and all jobs. The point here is to foster private partnerships between industry and educational institutions so that when students go to a community college or when students are looking at apprenticeship programs in the building trades or in four-year institutions, when they leave, they have the skills necessary to enter the workforce. In the middle, yes.
Thanks, sir. In the president's budget, talks about work requirements. Also, Congress is talking about some new welfare reform for able-bodied people. Could this sort of integrate into that at all?
Well, certainly, one of the important aspects of this is the portability of credentials. When someone earns a skill, when someone learns a skill, it's important to signal to other employers that this person knows a certain set of skills. And so I should say the emphasis is on high quality apprenticeships, because it's important to not water things down, and it's important to have skills that are portable and that are indicative of quality. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the overall focus on workforce development, the president's budget contains about 40% cut in all workforce skills programs from the last budget. If workforce development is a priority, why is the president calling for that? And then secondly, my understanding is the budget has about $90 million for apprenticeship programs, which is also what President Obama had requested. How is this expanding what the last administration wanted to do?
Right. So let me circle back to the point I made about private partnerships and what the building trades do. The building trades invest $1 billion a year of private money to develop a skilled workforce. And so I want to challenge the assumption that the only way to move policy is to increase government spending. What we're trying to measure here is outcomes, right? And so private to private partnerships, if industry is in the building trades willing to work with labor to foster these programs, isn't that exactly what we want to see? And so we should measure success based on outcomes and not based simply on spending. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Were you calling?
I was calling right in front of you, and then I'll follow up with you. How's that?
So how do you foster these private-to-private relationships? Is there some executive action that will be taken? Is there a tax policy proposal? How exactly are you proposing that this would happen?
Right. So,
because it hasn't, I guess, organically happened beyond what already exists.
I will answer in two parts. First, you've already seen that to a large extent as we've had roundtables with business leaders, as Ivanka Trump has conducted several meetings with CEOs around the country here at the White House. And the second part to your answer is stay tuned and listen to the Wednesday announcement. Yes, ma'am.
Is there certain region or group of people you're trying to focus in on with these apprenticeships, especially since, even as the president's saying that the unemployment rate is doing well under his administration, there's still groups of people, be it region or be it by race, be it by gender, that still have issues when it comes to employment. Is there a focus on certain groups, certain regions, certain genders?
So ma'am, you are correct. So the unemployment rate, I believe, is 4.3%. The broader unemployment rate, that is the U6 rate, I believe is now at 8.4%. And as we've had discussions with CEOs that are looking at these apprenticeship programs, one of the items of discussion is a way to work with communities that you typically don't see going into the STEM fields and other fields. And part of that discussion has been, how do you target those groups? How do you reach out? And it's interesting because apprenticeships help here, because apprenticeships bring students together in a cohort model with individuals who are currently working in their field, and so it allows the possibility of role modeling. An apprentice can have a role model that can provide support and can introduce them to the field, and so I actually think this is going to be a great thing to for expanding opportunities, for example, to women in STEM.
One
Yes,
follow-up on that. So with that, and you're saying women in STEM, but they're still, you know, when you boil down to race, the African American and Hispanic unemployment numbers, particularly in STEM. Is this administration looking to push also apprenticeships for those communities as well, for the private partnerships?
We're looking, and again, we're looking to push apprenticeships across the board, all people, all industries. This is an opportunity for everyone.
Mr. Secretary?
Sir, red tie.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned that you're targeting this towards all sorts of professions, not just blue-collar professions. How do you get around, in many states there are laws that would prevent this sort of thing, such as in the legal profession, where most states, I believe, don't allow people to do things like read for the bar anymore? How do you get around regulations and state laws?
So let me circle back and clarify. The question was, is this just targeted earlier to blue collar? And then I said no. In fact, it's across the board. And I gave an example where experience-based education has been advocated. And I want to be clear. The vast majority of apprenticeships are not for law. Okay, let's start there. So the question about state barriers, I really think is a non-issue, because for the vast majority of apprenticeships are going to be in the types of professions where students are starting out, entry professions that you typically see coming out of community college, professions that you typically see at most large state four-year institutions. And for those professions, you don't have those types of barriers. Right behind you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Given the advantages of apprentice programs, what are the CEOs telling you about why they aren't used much more often?
So, I don't want to speak for the CEOs because they haven't told me why they're not used more often. What I can tell you is that every CEO that I have spoken with has made a personal commitment to pursuing these. The CEOs are excited. I attended a business roundtable event around this, and to a person, the CEOs are looking forward to it, because the CEOs need the skilled workforce, and they recognize Americans want to work. We just need to marry up the desire to work with the workforce skills. In the back, yes, sir.
You're one of the newcomers at the administration here. I believe maybe this is the first time we've heard from you on camera, so I'm wondering if you could give us more of a broad reading of how you see the labor market currently. You mentioned the unemployment rate's at 4.3%. You brought up the U6, but I'm wondering if you could give us your read on what some of the bright spots are with the job market right now and what some of the challenges are as you see it.
So the bright spots are obvious. We've had almost 600,000 new jobs so far this calendar year. The 4.3% unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 16 years, since 2001. The number of job vacancies, in a sense, points to the skills gap, but it's really a phenomenal number that's quite positive. 6 million job vacancies means that if we can fix this skills gap, there's 6 million jobs that we can fill right now, and you compare that to 6.9 million individuals that are unemployed, and wow. You know, I think one of to fully answer your question, one of the challenges that we need to look at is the labor force participation. There are a number of Americans that are forgotten, that have been ignored, and that have dropped out of the workforce. Labor force participation is lower than it should be, and our hope, and Ivanka Trump's hope, and this administration's hope, and certainly, you know, President Trump just this morning referenced these individuals who are forgotten, because they're the ones that elected him. Through this apprenticeship program, you know, we're hoping to bring them back into the labor force, because to have growth, we need that labor force growth.
I think you would admit that this is just a small part of bringing the labor force participation rate up. What else do you think needs to happen? Is it tax reform? Is it, what else needs to happen?
All of the above, right? This is a small but very, very significant part, because, you know, if you start providing, if you start changing the system to demand-driven education, where educational institutions, whether they be 2- or 4-year colleges or other or experience-based educational institutions, are providing workforce skills with each passing year, for every hundreds of thousands of folks that go through this, those are all new jobs. But certainly, all the policies that you see this administration administering, whether it be tax reform or other, is part of bringing individuals back into the workforce. Ma'am.
Yes. When would we see results? When would the skills gap close? And what types of jobs are we talking about exactly versus professions?
So when, I think, is a very speculative question. I can't provide you an exact date. And the second question was, I'm sorry?
Jobs.
Again, what types of jobs? I think we're looking to apply this broadly across all industries. You know, it's interesting, because as some of you know, I was at a university, and I know a student that really wanted to be a police officer, and so that student majored in criminal justice. And when he graduated, he probably had student debt, but he didn't have a job, because criminal justice doesn't prepare you to be a police officer. So what would things be like if actually a criminal justice degree allowed students that wanted to have the option of also attend a police academy? And I want to give that as a specific example of what these possibilities would be. What would a legal studies degree be like if you could actually also get paralegal or legal assistance training? There are possibilities all across that we can look at. Ma'am.
Two things, so bear with me. There is an idea out there for at least one big city to require students graduating high school to have either letters saying they're going to college, the military, or indeed a trade school, which would lead to these kinds of jobs. I'm wondering what you think of that. And my second part of that is to really help us understand what the White House is doing with these meetings with the CEOs. Is anything being reduced to a memo of understanding or a letter so we actually get the pledge? Because I want to have more of a sense of what the is out there. Nice meetings are nice, but what is the promise that you could say that people are telling you, and how are you codifying it so you have it written down so you could go back to the CEO and you said you're going to do it and you didn't. So could you explain how you're writing it down?
Happy to answer both. First, what do we think about requirements that every student have a letter saying what they're going to do? I'll speak just for myself on this one. I worry about a requirement that requires students to do A, B, or C. I think our nation is about choosing, and I think you need to respect individuals' choices. And you can certainly encourage. You can say, what are you going to do with yourself? What do you want to do? But I always worry when I hear the word requirement, because I think we're about choice. Going to your second point, I'll say in part, stay tuned for the Wednesday announcement as to what specifically we're going to be doing. And I would say after that Wednesday announcement, you can certainly expect quick and vigorous follow-up with the various CEOs and industry associations with which the administration has been speaking, because at least for myself, the expectation would be, okay, you said you're very interested in this. Let's sit down and let's pen something out and let's see how we can go forward. One last question, ma'am.
I want to get you to clarify your answer to Julie's question about the budget, because there's so much confusion about this. When you're saying the president is interested in outcomes, and you come from an academic environment, is the president saying that the Labor Department has evaluated all the existing programs before recommending cutting grants or workplace support for young people, seniors, agriculture, adults who've been displaced? Are you saying you've evaluated all those programs in recommending that they be cut because they're not working, or because the president merely does not want to spend the money?
So as you pointed out, I come from an academic setting, so let me try to answer the question by analogy. It used to be that the question of whether a university is, or how to, is doing well was a function of how much the university spends. And, in Florida, you're now seeing questions like, what is your graduation rate? How many students that are graduating are holding jobs? And so you're seeing a focus on outcome as opposed to spending. And the point that I was trying to make, and I'll reiterate, is that we tend in Washington to simply say, how much more money can we spend on something, rather than let's think outside the box and try to solve a problem. And I think we owe it to the American taxpayer that is ultimately footing this bill to focus less on how much we spend and more on whether, in fact, the problems are being solved. So thank you very much.